Hi YouTube, we're here with the Aero Commander. This is part 5, the Aero Commander UMX flaps install. And we're back for some more action. Where we last left you off, we had just assembled this where we had soldered in the signal, power, and ground wire. Now we just need to tap some power, and we'll have functioning flaps as part of this one electrical control system. Then we're going to be mounting it. If we were running out of memory at the last time, I was about ready to throw a piece of tape over these wires here. Keeping tidy wiring helps so much in this, because otherwise it takes a lot more room to keep the same wires in the same spot. Okay, so got the soldering iron getting hot right now, and our next step is going to be to tap some power. Now, while we have access to this, I'm wondering if it would be prudent to... Gosh, I hate unplugging those ultra micro plugs like that. It might be a time that would be prudent to try and get all this stuff neatly worked out. Because right now we have so much extra here, and I feel like it's going to cause a problem when we've got all the linkages for the flaps going back, because it's going to be coming right through this area. The linkages are going to be sweeping here, and we're eventually going to have problems getting in the way of this stuff. So I have to just be a little bit proactive with this in my approach to handling all these. Now this is where we tapped power for the LEDs, and I'm just trying to remember exactly how neat and orderly we made that. I think we must have made it pretty orderly, or it wouldn't still be intact. But the truth is, you see how much extra we've got, guys. It's just an egregious amount of extra. Depending on which direction this flap servo goes, we could try to balance the plane by putting the weight of the resistor bank and the extra wire on one side versus the other, keeping in mind that we've got to avoid this side because that's where this linkage goes for the rudder. So let's get a good look at this real quick before we continue on. Gotta get you guys pointed down just a little bit. Now, we didn't add very much weight when we did this LED mod. I felt like we did a pretty good job on that. And so that's always good, but the thing is, there's always room for improvement. And since I have to go into these wires again somewhere, I wonder if it would make sense to go ahead and eliminate a little bit more weight as we do it, rather than just adding another joint. Because every time you add a joint like this, you potentially add a pretty significant amount of weight. And now that we have it out and easy to get to, I could potentially throw a piece of heat shrink on there too, which is tempting at this point. Plus, like I said, I can try to keep these tidied up as I go. Okay, so this would be the red wire would need to attach to the white. So the soldering iron is probably just coming up to temperature. I'll get that tip cleaned up. I think I might need to get a new solder cleaner, a tip cleaner. Okay, so I was just thinking it might not be a good idea to be dripping solder in that spot because we're quite vulnerable there. I'm going to actually take this little tray. I'm going to just put that underneath to be on the safer side. I do not want to drip solder onto the board there. That could be devastating to the plane. Might be really, really hard to fix too. We're just going to do this. So I guess the challenge I'm sort of facing right now is that it's in there pretty good, actually. I'm struggling on how long I want to make it, but I'm just going to make a decision and stick with it. Sometimes the lack of decision is the worst decision you can make. I may need to plug you in over here, soldering iron. Did I cover you up with CA? Is that what's going on here? I think that's what's going on here. Yeah. That was a smart maneuver. I totally had forgotten I did that. And at the same time, it's not really a big deal either, because I'll just eliminate that one connection point, because it's unnecessary at this point to have this much extra cable. So I'll just go ahead and clip it out from the side. Lay that aside. Now I need to get in here with a little fresh solder and let the fresh solder take that wire off. See what I'm doing, guys? I'm displacing all the CA. Just be careful you don't overdo it and melt your connector, because you could actually do that and melt your connector. That'd be a bummer. Okay, so now I need to actually get my wire stripped. Remember, I need it to be on this side, because this side is going to be occupied by this. Or I need it to be back further, or up further. Maybe I'll just go for the up further part, because then my wires will come out right there next to the other bundle of wires. That'd be super handy, actually, if I can get away with it. For clearance, I'll just have to favor over here, I guess. Man, I'm so concerned I'm going to end up hitting that, because this is going to go right up past the halfway point. I think we're going to be okay, though. I think we have enough clearance. Oh, and while we're thinking about it, we ought to relieve the stress on these wires right now with a little bit of CA. This could be a bad maneuver, but I'm going to do it anyway. I have to play the odds here that I have my wiring correct. I know I have it correct, I'm just more worried about the stress on the wires themselves. A little bit of kicker to get it set up quick. Just a little bit more CA. Now the CA is not without weight though, so don't go too nuts. And plus, of course, this isn't foam safe. So make sure you don't use that on the foam. Okay. Okay, so now the flaps servo is going to be running the wrong way. We already know that at this point. That's not a big deal. So you see what I'm talking about? Now that's going to relieve the stress on the board itself. It'll take the stress in the cable instead, which is what we want. So if that's essentially where it's going to go, now I need to operate within the context of that. So that means that this wire is never going to be much longer than this, because I've only got one wire that's long enough to reach in the old configuration. So now I've got this connector down here, so I'll probably cut it just a little bit back, and then I'll tap it in there, and that's just going to be about the perfect length. Okay, so both of those need to end up being about that same length. Okay, and then this will be handy for another project. Okay, so we're just taking two wires, like so. While this is detached, we can go ahead and give it a couple of twists to tidy up the wires a little bit. Okay, so that's the way that's going to go. And you see this little white spot here? That's actually just a little CA actually. So you should be able to clip that off, because it's just superficial at that point. Okay, and then if we do in fact end up doing heat shrink, which I am not 100% sold on that yet, that makes me nervous about taking apart this connector. They are not the strongest connectors, as you can probably imagine. I am going to tin these wires right now though. That's a for sure thing. Should be able to tin these without any negative consequence. And I want to put this thing back underneath where we're going to be tinning, in case we would drip. Alright, so I need to get a little of that excess solder off of that. Just knocking that off. I need some excess solder off of here. You see that CA, how it blows up the big cloud of smoke and nastiness? Make sure you don't breathe that stuff. And get your tip cleaned as quick as you can after you go over something like that. It's a good way to ruin a tip quick. Alright, this is kind of challenging to hold all these wires together, guys. I'm trying to get them to stay together, but I don't have any extra at all. So I'm probably going to have to take a little bit more sheath off so I can do a fold. Or twist or something. Okay, there's a simple twist. And then I'm going to do like a 90-degree fold here, which is going to give us some mechanical hold. Then we're not depending on just solder will depend on the wire and the strength of that lot of wires, rather. Although I would have rather seen the fold in the middle of the cable, because I'm going to bend. I need something small. Yeah, let's try this. Need to support the wire so that it gives it a place to bend, and then I can get my bend halfway. It'll be stronger by a long shot. It'll make a cleaner joint too. That's a glob of solder, so it's going to compress once we're done getting heat to it. And I want the wires the direction they're going to go, which is that way, so that when they're heated, they'll relax into that position. Just like that. Okay, cool. So that's ready to go. That's all soldered and cooled to a great degree. Now I need to make the same thing happen on the negative side. So let's untape that. Well, I'm sort of tempted to tape that up first. Might be a little easier to do it while they're not both opened at the same time. I really liked the way that glue joint worked. It wasn't too terribly difficult to undo either, so I'm going to go ahead and do it again. This will give us a little bit more mechanical strength here, but it is going to make it much harder to tap more power later if I need to tap power for like another light, or if I would ever add something else. But keep in mind, we're going to be tapping off of that second board more than likely if we need to do that. Okay, this behind so the kicker doesn't get everywhere. And then just a little bit more. Weight is important, but there's times when it's worth it. And right now is one of those times. Because I want that joint very strong. And it's going to be just that. Great. Alright, so now on this one we got to do the same endeavor. There's the tip of the tape. I can't believe how good that tape is holding up. I mean, granted, I know it's only a little bit of age, but my goodness, I can barely untape it. That's great. Makes me want to retape it, which I'll do instead of the heat shrink now. Okay, so now same scenario here. Just got to undo this joint, and there's going to be CA over it, so I just got to melt the CA off, and then also get the solder joint broke free. Should be pretty easy to do both at the same time. Okay, clean the tip as quick as possible. Get that crap off of there. Okay. Great. Where did the cap go for this anyway? There it is. Okay, so the negative wire is going to need to be a little bit longer because it's got the resistors in it. But what we can do is we can actually double that back on itself so that it's like this, and that'll help to buy some extra distance there. So I think that's what we'll probably do to gain that differential back. And then on the brown wire, they're going to come up here and meet together, kind of toward the top here. I'm going to get that up there in that general vicinity. Okay, and we'll keep this for another project. I don't know if we must have already done the orange one like that. This time we're just going to get a little bit more wire right off the bat so we don't have to dink around with it quite so much. And then we're going to take our side cutters. We're going to cut right there. We're going to take this whole lead right out. Don't need that extra length of wire now. Okay, so you can see where it's shiny here. That's where we're going to be bringing those wires together. So ideally, I would just be able to twist these together right now. Get those in a situation where they're pretty mechanically stout. Make sure I'm not tangling, and it looks like I might have done just that. It always gets tricky around this time of a build like this, because things start tripping over each other. You don't need 100 times twisted, but you get a handful of twists, it does really help. Gives you a lot more strength. Just remember, when this is all said and done, I want these to be pointed down, just like that, so they run like down the length of the wire. So I don't really care about the way that they are pointed in the middle of the wire. I just care where the solder joint is, because the solder is going to be stiff, and so it's going to make it kind of sit and resist a bend, especially after I add CA. I have to assume that's good for the moment. Now, here's the hard part. I have to now basically test this, and in order to test it, that means I need to plug in the battery, which is a little scary because I got all this crap all flopped everywhere. And basically, we're vulnerable, so I don't like this step, but I gotta do it. It's gonna happen right now. So it's plugged back in. I just got to make sure those don't touch, which so far they're not. Throttle cut's on. So it should energize both receivers. I'm either plugged in wrong, or I'm not plugged all the way in, or I'm dead shorted. That sounds horrible. You know why? Because I'm on top of that wire. Jeez, that's crappy. Glad I noticed that. There we go. Now the lights are on. Everything, guys. I gotta get the flap system set up with some elevator correction. Even if it's not needed, I still want to see it happen. That's awesome, guys. Okay, so that makes me feel a little bit better. Now I need to de-energize the circuit. And what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and shut off the radio. Now we can go ahead and finish getting glue and tape over these, and then get everything situated. And it'll be, I'm really tempted to go ahead and stick this down with some tape, but it may be temporary. It may be just like tape, not 3M tape. Okay, so now these twisty ties, I don't want exposed connections coming out of there, or exposed ends, so I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to take and just fold that tail over. It's going to actually be pretty difficult to undo that, to be honest. Which I'm not crazy about. I kind of want it to be a little easier to undo. So now I need to glue over this with this CA. Oh, we should technically be done soldering right now. So I'm going to get this tip prepped. Guys, this is part 5 of the UMX Aero Commander flaps install. And as you can probably imagine, there's more parts coming. If you've been following for the last day and last evening, thanks for joining us. I'm hoping you'll watch all the way through. If you like what you've seen, we've done this with a number of other planes. I'm sure you're already aware. Most of the people who've watched this type of video are regulars on my channel. And then most of the people that watch just the flights may not always be regulars. But welcome if you're new. We do this a lot. We add lights and LEDs all the time. I'll show you how to do it. This is, it's getting to where it's just so dang ridiculous to have to do this. Because we've got 6 and 7 channel receivers and we're not able to utilize them to the full extent that they should be utilized. Because Horizon Hobby decides that they're not going to activate channels and things of the sort. Which really just irritates the heck out of most of us. And then the people who aren't irritated by that are just okay with whatever they put out. Which, that's not to diminish. This is a really good plane. I really like it. If I knew I couldn't put flaps on it, would I still buy it? Probably. But let's just be clear. I'm not putting flaps on this plane. I'm adding flaps and another receiver. So I could be putting flaps on, you know, my toilet seat. It doesn't matter. It's a different receiver. It's a different radio controlled device. Just happens to be energized from the onboard power. Okay. Now that we got that out of the way. Alright, so talking about cable management real quick, because we've got a good opportunity at it to kind of control this stuff right now. And we won't later, believe me, it's going to be like near impossible. I really need to get those things wrapped up somehow. I'm trying to avoid using a bunch of zip ties because zip ties are relatively heavy. But you know, on this, I want to be able to undo it. And undoing it is pretty easy with a zip tie. Plus, I've got just so much vulnerability here. If I don't do this right, it could cause a lot of problems. I don't know that I want to leave that to chance. And if I do find that there's a problem, the zip ties give me the flexibility to undo what I've started to do. Okay, so now these are glued with CA. Of course, they would stick together to one another. That is just annoying. Get off of there. I'm probably going to have to get the soldering iron hot again because I think I just got those together. Nope, I lucked out. I didn't. I'm going to put some more glue on there. So if I'm flying along and all the LEDs shut off and the flaps are deployed and they don't respond, we'll know what the culprit is. It's this wire here, which is only half of a joke. Alright, so now we need to go ahead and get that protected with some electrical tape. But we're going to have a heck of a time getting that to stick on wires that have kicker on them, especially fresh kicker. So we are going to wipe it. Wipe it good with this, a Q-tip. Okay, once we get this clean, we'll go ahead and tape each set red together, black together, and then all of the lot of them together as well. That'll give us a pretty good chance at success. And guys, we're pretty much spent on time. I would be surprised if we get this tape on in time. Part 5 is coming to a close. Isn't it crazy how time flies when you're having fun? Or when you're tediously upgrading UMX planes? Either way, guys, I really appreciate you watching. I'm probably going to tape both of these, regardless of if I run out of memory. And if I do, thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Click the bell if you're interested in notifications. We would love to have you back. And if I can get this done, that'd be ideal. These wires are so dinky, guys. You got to be gentle with them. It's tempting to tape that signal straight to this, but boy, I would feel stupid if I shorted out. Okay, guys, you get the idea. Part 5 coming to a close. Come back for part 6. Don't forget to like and subscribe.